It's a great pleasure to start the next session with Isabel, who will talk to us about interpersonal communication in women's recipe collections in late modern English. So we move from early modern English women's recipe collections to late modern English. Thank you, Isabel.
Thank you for your introduction. First of all, I would like to mention that this piece of research is part of a project whose leader is Professor Alonso-Almeida, who is here with us today. So if you have any further questions, please come to him. And the project is entitled Interpersonal Devices in Specialized Household and Public Instructional Texts Written by Women in Modern English. The aim is to explore the expression of interpersonality in this recipe collection compiled by women, and I'm going to focus on the 18th and 19th centuries. And in order to do so, I compiled a corpus which is made up of 3 subcorpora. The first one is called Corpus of Women's Instructive Texts in English, the 19th century subcorpus, Corpus 19, which is being compiled by the members of the team working on the project. And it includes both printed text and manuscript recipe compilations from the 19th century. We have been working on this just since last October, so the data I'm presenting here correspond to January 2023, so it's quite a beta version. Then I compiled another corpus myself. I transcribed 3 different recipe collections which are held in Glasgow University Library, and they are part of the Ferguson collection. And then I also used the samples authored by women, contained in the recipe section of I just realized it should be modern, late modern English medical text by Tavitsainen and others. Here you've got the details, so that's the 19th century corpus. And I've tried to balance the corpora. So this one was 33,500 words. So I made that one similar, and then 19th century, because these two are 18th century and 19th century stuff. So on the whole, it's about 135,000 words. I extracted the data using a concordance program, Ancork, and the results were processed manually because of homonymy, you know. I was looking at the word lady as a title, so I'm going to refer to these ladies which are mentioned in the recipe collections, but sometimes this lady is a synonym for woman. So like the one you've got here, a lady who had long been troubled with them. So I discarded this specific example because that's not what I was looking for. And the same thing happens with this capital I. So I was looking for a first person pronoun I, but here this recipe is clearly a unit, a measure, right? 6 oranges and 1 lemon. So again, you have to do it manually. So I'm using corpus linguistics, but I agree with Ristanen on the idea that data are useful if you can interpret them correctly, right? So my approach is both qualitative and quantitative, but it's more qualitative. So I'm not interested in numbers just for the sake of numbers, right? So I intend to do a qualitative analysis using or illustrating my arguments with examples from the corpus. The construct of interpersonality has been dealt with by different authors, and they mainly concentrate on male speakers or male speeches. And recently the focus has been shifted towards female voices. And the starting point of this present study as an ambitious idea is a contention that men and women can use, can make use of similar discourse markers, but it is expected in future analyses that there will be a set of markers that could be identified as belonging to non-literary female writing. So that's the general idea, but obviously this is my first preliminary study on the topic, so I'm just going to concentrate on some features of interpersonality on texts written by women or compiled by women. So this phenomenon of interpersonality involves a series of linguistic choices that are intended to establish and keep relations, and we are going to analyze some of these choices. The writer's presence is essential to portray a convincing authorial voice and also to present their arguments. And there are some strategies at the author's disposal, and one of them is personal pronouns, which I will be dealing with in a minute. And some discourse markers are used to express authority and to engage with the readers. So these markers are related to the study of engagement, especially the personal pronouns, but I'm also interested in a specific attribution when these recipes are attributed to a doctor, a lady, or there are some other titles like Madam, Mr. and Mrs. Right, so that's what I've been looking for. Regarding pronouns, obviously, as you can imagine, there is an overwhelming presence of you, because these are instructive texts, so directives, and again, I'm quoting Risane, the only writings in which directives, imperatives are likely to occur in abundance are works containing instructions and directions, such as medical recipe collections, cookery books, rules, etc. So that's what we're going to see. I forgot to let you know that most of the recipes are medical, but there are some cooking recipes as well. And even some household recipes I will be referring later on. So you is present, but I'm going to refer to first person pronouns mainly, and he and she are also present, but they mainly refer to the patient. So here you have some numbers. As you can see, there is an outstanding presence of you, 74%. He 7%, oh sorry, I don't know, yeah, she 4%, and I'm really going to concentrate on the upper segment of the circle, so that's 13% of first person pronoun I, and 2% of first person plural we. Right, the use of the first person singular, according to Mele and Alonso-Almeida, you can see Alonso-Almeida is my hero here, and along with Tavitsainen. This first person singular pronoun usually indicates authorial presence and power position with respect to audience, whereas plural form is often used to involve the textual community. Let's see if this is true, right? According to the data. So here we have first person singular pronoun that is used to introduce experience. So here the author is saying, I've done this. So I used to, obviously this is editorial procedure. I highlighted in bold the specific parts which make it easier for you to read it. So I used to say out, I have experienced this, I used this to my left ear, I use brandy and such. And because of this expertise, so as I have experienced these, I'm an expert on these, and because these have been proved, I dare warrant, right? So this is mainly experience and expertise on the part of the author. I have also searched for certain collocations. So the pronoun, what kind of verbs that does it appear with, right? So first we've got mental verbs like think and observe. And here, this is to indicate or to introduce the author's opinion, right? So I think, or I have observed, as I observed in the present, in the preface, some other examples of no doubt, regard, right? This is my opinion. I cannot doubt the virtues of this specific remedy, or I should regard. I have also searched for communication verbs. And in this case, recommend is the most common one among all the other communication verbs. This suggests that there is a strong authoritative and powerful position in this communicative situation. So the writer says I'm in a position of recommending something, although sometimes this is mitigated by the use of would. So here you have examples of I would recommend, would recommend. So 4 times. But we also have it in the present tense. I here recommend. Or with must, I must recommend. There are several examples, or I recommend again, or I do not recommend. And we can also find advise and say as collocative communication verbs. Now, regarding the first person plural pronoun, here we've got 2 main ideas. And I'm going to let you know about these specific manuscripts, Ferguson 61, because it is really an interesting one. It includes mainly medical recipes, some cooking recipes, not many, utilities like how to make ink, but also household recipes and other recipes devoted to animals, because, you know, the responsibilities of the late modern English woman was taking care of family members and servants' health care, but also other members of the family, of the group, of the state, and that included animals. So she includes recipes to feed turkeys, to fatten chicken, to make a cow give milk, or to heal a horse's heel, or even to polish men's boots, or to clean dirty pictures. So that's why this manuscript is so special, as unique among all the others, right? In fact, the first one is about how to breed turkeys, right? So let them drink water, but give them new milk and lettuce to eat upon. We give them. So who is this we? Is we in our family, or so probably this we is just our family, but what about the next one? Dr. Quiet and Dr. Diet and Dr. Mary are the best counsels of physicians we have. So I think probably here's a desire to include or to call for the community. You know that recipes were shared with family members, acquaintances, neighbors. So probably this we calls for the community. It could be just a family, but maybe it's a way of making the community involved in these. And there are some other examples of these, and I would like to refer to these Coles' quotations, because I found so many of these we in this specific writer that I got interested in learning who this Mary Cole was. Unfortunately, she's not included in the Oxford Dictionary of National Biography, but I learned through Wikipedia that Mary Cole was a long-serving cook to some Earl of Drogheda, an Irish Earl. So here, she's not really talking about cooking, but it's mainly the use of plants as remedies. So who is this we? I think it's a way of involving the colleagues. So, but is it we practitioners, we healers, or we cooks? But in a way, I think it's a way of appealing to some other peers or colleagues in the profession. Now I would like to refer to a specific attribution, right? So it's common that sometimes we find this mention of a doctor or lady, lady plus a title. Mr. and Mrs. You can see that Mrs. is very abundant, but we don't know who these Mrs. were. Probably acquaintances, people the author knew, and just on 2 occasions there is Madam something that was just in Ferguson 15. So let's have a look at some of these specific attributions. So doctor, there are references to Richard Mead. And this Richard Mead was a famous physician at the time. And I found it not only in this specific corpus I compiled for this presentation, but I came across Dr. Mead in Welcome 7721, Welcome to Hunter 135 and Hunter 251. So she was a well-known physician at the time because he was physician to Queen Anne. And he must have been known for this remedy to cure the bite of a mild dog. In fact, as a curiosity, he had a house here in Bloomsbury, and his house is just within a walking distance, and is very close to the place where we are today. And it was the basis for the Great Ormond Street Hospital. So if you walk around, you may come across this building. Another doctor at the time was Dr. Stephen. I don't know exactly who Dr. Stephen was, but he was very famous for cordial waters. So you can see he appears in my Ferguson 15, but he also appears in some other manuscripts I've been dealing with, like Welcome 3009 or Welcome 1322. So obviously these were prestigious figures, right? So people said, this recipe, I got it from Dr. someone, because that's an important reference. And the same thing happens with lady. With lady, it just appears in 2 of the manuscripts, Ferguson 15 and Ferguson 61. It doesn't appear in Ferguson 43 because Ferguson 43 was attributed to Lady Stanhope, so she was already a lady. But as you were mentioning before, this is a way of showing a status, a way of showing off, if you want to put it that way, because, okay, it's not just me. I got this recipe from Lady Osselton or Lady whatever. Right? Or I know someone who got this recipe from this lady, right? So these appear on these occasions, and just my conclusions, 2 minutes, yeah. The analysis reflects the attitude of these female writers towards the text and their negotiation of their position in the specialized community with a communicative activity that includes the expression of authority mainly, but there are some other aspects. For instance, I've mentioned that self-mention is used to engage with readers, to show authority, reliability, but also to involve the textual community. And a specific attribution, in my opinion, is used to build reliability, trustworthiness, and to show social status. And in the future, I would like to continue the study having a look at evaluative adjectives. And that's it. Thank you very much.
start just by commenting that it's really interesting how your talk has brought together themes from the earlier papers. So once again, we have women as a source of authority. We have the idea of the recipe, which is actually something which may be medical or it may be other things. These things are sort of mixed together. This idea of authority and status being used as a sort of way of licensing knowledge. We've got that there as well. Also this blurring of social roles and the association of the medical recipes with household tasks. So these are, well, I gave the example of the cook who was writing this, and you got everything from feeding turkeys to producing these recipes, which is very helpful. With regard to the work on the pronouns we've done, a thought occurred to me that with we, I think you might be doing this anyway, but I wondered if you've done it. You've gone in and you sort of started in a way almost to annotate the we's to discover whether or not they're including the reader in your opinion, or it's some external who are talking about these categories. But I wondered if you thought of going into the text and trying to sort of annotate them so you could get a sense of how often the references to a group including the reader or a group excluding the reader, which might talk to authority and power. Have you thought of doing a sort of more fine-grained quantitative analysis of the distribution of the we's?
Yes, I should. I mean, I haven't done it because that's my first approach to interpersonality, to tell you the truth. I've got a long-standing history of working with recipes, but I never really dealt with this approach. And that's why I was not so sure whether this we was we colleagues, we the community, just we the family. So certainly is something I should continue delving into.
It's wonderfully slippery, of course, because a lot of the time it's quite ambiguous.
Yeah.
But I would guess that where you're looking at text like this, you can pretty much assume in some cases that they're talking about a group with authority on occasion, and it would be good to have that. Paul.
Well, maybe there could be some focus on the second person pronouns as well. If there was some preferences and the first ones, then you're writing the person pronouns. But I know the study that Gavin did a while ago with patient feedback, and we looked at the word you, and we saw how particularly men are to kind of generalize their experience. They say things like, you can never get an appointment with this doctor's. And they're talking about themselves, but they're turning it into you and almost say it's everybody, and it's kind of quite an interesting strategy. And also, I think sometimes you can sort of share possibly assumptions that the author is making about the readers as well. Second person pronouns like, your servants may find this, and it implies that they are servants. So I think the second person pronouns might be potentially quite interesting to look at as well.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you. Yeah.
Ideas.
Yeah.
I think there was a question over here too, maybe two questions. Maybe by the way. Okay. A joint question.
I don't know if I just missed it and you mentioned it, but I would be interested if you observe a connection between the authorial perspectives and specific parts of the text, like in introduction parts or closing parts, that the use is more frequent there. Is there any tendency?
Yeah, definitely. Thank you very much. I didn't mention these, but very often they appear in the efficacy phrase, like the cases Laura mentioned before, and not so much within the body of the recipe, because it's quite well structured. So it's usually ingredients and preparation, application. Sometimes it appears in the title, but that's not common. So very often is within the section of efficacy phrases and virtues in case there is a specific section for that. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, my question is more about the methodological approach. So about the difficult art of building a diachronic corpus and to be representative of the period. I noticed that you have a subcorpus for the 19th century, and it's really interesting for us because we're going the other way around. We excluded the 19th century because it was so different from other texts. What was your reason? Maybe you said it, but why the 19th century?
Well, because the project we are working on includes modern English in the wider sense. So from the 16th to the 19th century, and so far the compilation has been done on the 19th century, and that's why I compare. I had some other texts from the 16th and 17th, but I thought it made more sense to make it like a block, 18th and 19th century, but obviously that could be extended to 16th and 17th century as well. But I don't think there is much difference in the case of the recipes. They follow the usual pattern and the usual stages which are found in previous periods. Just that in the 18th century and 19th century, the efficacy phrase very rarely refers to God. There are some cases, one or two cases, and on the whole is falling out of use. That's something Emma mentioned in the book that goes with this corpus. But in general terms, they follow the usual pattern, so there is not much difference between the 18th and the 19th century, really.
Maybe the specific.
Yeah, I mean, I've tried to do that with other studies, and as I said, well, for instance, in the previous conference, I was dealing with innovations, and I talk about, as you may remember, I talked about ingredients introduced from the Americas, like tobacco that Emma mentioned before, chocolate as a medicine, or sarsaparilla, or cochineal, or some of these products that came from America. So there was innovation in the ingredients, but not really in the methods or the sections to be found in a recipe.
Strand that seems to be running through a lot of the papers with narratives, and I'm wondering the first person pronouns. Is there a kind of a narrative when you mentioned that the first person pronouns are sort of introducing the experience of the author? Are they building it? Are they using it to build a kind of narrative? I did this and then I did that, or are they more isolated?
Yeah, I would say, especially in manuscript recipes, which is what I really know best, there is no narrative. It's just I mentioned that I've experienced these, I've used these, but really there are no anecdotes, or maybe just some comments like, I experienced these when I was with child. This Mary Harrison Ferguson 61, she says, I learned these when I was with child at Aston the year 1710, but that's it. That's the longest we get. Usually it's just, I used it, I experienced these, but there is no narrative properly. Mm-hmm. Not that is, as far as I remember, it's just this specific recipe. Usually it's very repetitive. It's not really a narrative, it's just instructions. Take these, do these. Then when it's ready, do this other thing. That's it.
So it sounds like that's brief statements of sort of a course for belief. So yeah. I recognize this from, or I did this and I saw this, that type of thing. So it relates to that, perhaps.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Great. In that case, nearly time to change over. So thank you very much.